Welcome everyone to day 2. I'm Megan. I'm a physical therapist that is so excited to be continuing our series with Lee in Union Yoga. And for day 2, we're going to be moving up the chain to focus on the pelvis with a focus on the pelvic tilt. This is such a micro movement that a lot of us may not necessarily even think about, but it's a movement that supports all of our motions throughout the course of our day, whether we're working, with our families, or in the yoga studio. And the pelvic tilt can be practiced in different positions to really try and get comfortable with how it feels. Quick anatomy is that the hips come up to a ball and socket joint and they sit inside of the pelvis. The hips move in many different ways, including forwards and backwards when we walk. They come out to the side and back in, and they also rotate in and out. Where our pelvis comes to meet our low back, the hips and the low back also connect to move the way our pelvis sits on our spine. All of us have a nice natural curve in our low back. It's normal, and it's a very strong structural part of our back. You may have seen maybe some folks have a little bit too much of an arch, or maybe even some folks can kind of be a little bit more flat. Both can be normal as long as you can kind of work through those different ranges so that you're comfortable. So a standing pelvic tilt is bringing your belly button towards your spine and trying to tuck your tailbone down towards the ground. If we were in mountain pose and building that strength from the feet and ankles up towards the pelvis, we would think about our tailbone coming straight down and our belly button really being tight towards the back of our spine. This helps to really set up the strength of our core and trunk and our postural alignment from the bottom up. So we'll spend 2 deep breaths in mountain pose here with the belly button tucked strong towards the spine. Awesome job. So that's stationary pelvic tilt in mountain pose. The second position we'll try our pelvic tilt in today is one that many of us may be spending a little bit more time in than we're normally used to, and it's seated. Whether we're at the computer desk during our workday or taking classes online, a lot of my patients have been complaining that they're spending way too much of their time seated. Of course, besides taking breaks, getting up and moving for coffee or water every once in a while, there are some movements that you can do in your chair to really keep your back happy. So if you're seated with your feet right underneath your knees and your back up nice and tall, a pelvic tilt is imagining that curve in the low back, like there's a magnet there. And we're going to magnetize our low back towards the back of the chair or the back of the wall, wherever you're seated. So again, tighten your belly button, try to magnetize or press your low back down or towards the back of the chair. We're going to pause for about 3 seconds, and then we'll release. You can come back to neutral, or if it feels good, just like cat-cow, you can kind of arch forward a little bit, bringing your chest up. We're going to go through this a few times. So again, tighten your belly button, bringing the back towards the back of your chair or the wall. Kind of stretching through the low back here, reversing that arch, and then coming back to neutral for a little bit farther forward. So as you cycle through a few more of these, always in a pain-free range of motion, an image I like to think about is our pelvis like a bowl of water. So if we're doing a pelvic tilt going backwards, the bowl of water is going to tilt back, the water is going to kind of run towards the back of the bowl. And then as we come back to neutral, the bowl of water will come back towards the middle. And if we decide to do a little bit of an arch forward, the bowl of water will tilt forward, allowing the water to rush forward. So playing with that idea of the magnetization or the bowl of water, a few more times in a pain-free range. Breathing through the motions. We'll do one more each way. And last one. bringing your pelvis towards 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. These are all, again, very fine motions, very kind of micro motions. But when we develop that motor control and that strength of our pelvic floor, our pelvis, and our deep abdominal muscles, not the six-pack ab ones, but the deep core muscles right along our spine, it tends to make our back so much happier. We'll end this video in hands and knees position for a little bit of cat-cow. I've even done, cat-cow on the wall before when I'm stuck on, a long meeting, and it works out pretty well as well. But for cat-cow on the floor, we'll start up with a strong foundation with our knees underneath our hips, our hands underneath the shoulders, fingers spread wide for good stability and support. And instead of just diving into the full cat-cow, we'll begin with just a pelvic tilt at the low back. So the first thing we're going to do is taking that magnet, kind of magnetizing it towards the ceiling now. The back rising towards the ceiling, your tailbone down, just moving the low back for right now. We'll then take the tailbone, scoop it under, tailbone's going to point up towards the ceiling, allowing your belly button to sag towards the ground. We'll do 2 more with just the low back, so pressing the low back up towards the ceiling, tailbone down, and then allowing the tailbone to come up towards the ceiling, letting the belly drop. So once we feel like we have good pelvic control from there, we can start to add segments in, maybe now working our cat up towards the mid-back, first starting with the tailbone, tightening the belly button up, adding a little bit of that mid-back stretch, and then curving and arching slowly with the tailbone like a string of blocks or a string of pearls moving through the back. Breathing in. Maybe we can add a little bit of the upper back now, so rounding at the back, coming up towards the ceiling. Always with the pelvic tilt first, letting the head drop last, and then 1 more, curving the tailbone up, letting each vertebrae fall down. The final way I show my patients pelvic tilt is on their back, so we can finish there. The final imagery I really like to think about with the knees bent and the feet flat on the ground is imagine like you're on a sandy beach. Nice warm weather, it's raining here in Boston, so I'm thinking about somewhere maybe in Aruba, where I've never been before, but we're gonna take that little arch in the low back, and then we're gonna press the back down towards the ground, so flattening on the ground here. We're gonna pause and hold it for about 3 seconds, and then slowly release. So this is another option for the pelvic tilt, pressing the low back down, scooping the tailbone up a little, and a nice 3-second hold and 3-second release. You can practice a few of these in bed every morning to just get your spine moving, or even laying on the mat preparing for your yoga class to get ready for some of the more standing postures. We'll do 2 more. And last one. Awesome. Thank you for joining me for day 2 of our yoga series with a focus on the pelvis and the pelvic tilt today. So whether you start your morning off with some pelvic tilts to strengthen your core, you practice some of them in your chair during the Zoom calls, or you incorporate it into your standing postures here at the studio. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for day number 3 to more of the spine.